Hand of a Woman, John Morris argues the killer was the wife of Royal Surgeon Sir John Williams. He explained why.
I once heard that there have been more books written about Jack the Ripper than all the presidents of the United States put together. So I suppose that if I was ever going to write a book about the Ripper and expected it to obtain any great literary merit, then another book about Jack the Ripper would most certainly not have been it. Not, that is, unless I had something specific to say that set it apart from all the other books that have ever been written.
Tell us first what you believe happened, and then you can start to talk about the evidence.
About 5 years ago, a man called Tony Williams wrote a book called Uncle Jack, in which he named his great-great-uncle, Sir John Williams, or a doctor as he was at the time of the murders, as the murderer. He was a man who had risen from very humble farming origins in Carmarthen and went on to become a top London doctor. He married a local girl called Lizzie Williams. She was a very, very wealthy woman in her own right. My father and I were discussing the theory that Sir John Williams was the murderer, as set out by Tony Williams, but no clear motive was ascribed for the murders. It was alleged he was having an affair with the last victim, young pretty Mary Kelly from Limerick in Ireland, and for reasons that are very unclear, that he murdered her. But as my father and I were talking about this, my father was 96, so quite elderly, and he has had a gift for seeing the obvious, and he quickly realised that while the doctor most certainly did not have a motive to murder his attractive young mistress, his wife certainly did.
What about the brutality, the strength needed for all these murders? Women can be strong, but is there any evidence that Lizzie Williams was that kind of a woman?
Between autumn of 1888 and February of this year, there have been 30 attacks upon women that have been almost identical to the Ripper attacks. In 29 of the cases, all the attackers have been caught, and in every single case, the attacker was a woman. In only 4 of those cases were they assisted by a man, but even then only in a very subordinate capacity. One of the women was a 40-year-old woman from America who used her 17-year-old son to restrain her victim while she did what she tried to do. So, yes, a woman certainly would be more than capable of committing a Ripper-type crime.
It's still a guess, though, isn't it, John?
It's an educated guess, but it's based on circumstantial evidence. But as you know yourself, people have been hanged on circumstantial evidence, and the evidence against Lizzie Williams is overwhelming. The fact that there were 3 parallel scratch marks on the side of one of the victim's neck, which appear to have been the marks left by long fingernails. Again, in the same crime, there were 3 items neatly placed by the feet of the victim, including a piece of coarse muslin, which was carefully folded in 2. After the death of the first victim, Polly Nichols, a number of women were seen walking in the Whitechapel Road and no men, even though the area was very well policed at the time. And I believe that police were patrolling where the murder had occurred at least every 30 minutes. After the death of the 4th victim, 3 small buttons from a woman's boot were found in the clotted blood by the neck of the victim. The victim herself was wearing men's lace-up boots. But the most important clues of all come after the death of Mary Kelly, the final victim. A number of articles of clothing were found burned in her fireplace. The remains of a cotton twill skirt, the remains of a cape, and the remains of a felt hat. Now, the skirt and the cape were clothes that no one had ever seen Mary Kelly wearing, and it's known that she didn't even own a hat. I've always been interested in the name Jack the Ripper ever since I was a very small boy. My ears pricked up when I heard it more than 50 years ago. It's kept my attention ever since. Whichever male suspect you put forward does not really fit the crimes that were committed. But when you put a woman in the frame, then a woman certainly does.
That's John Morris. His book is called Hand of a Woman, and he believes Jack the Ripper, no, it was Jill the Ripper, at least it was a woman, and her name was Lizzie Williams. What is fascinating is that this case, which is more than 100 years old now, still continues to grip people so much and produce so many books. Well, on our World Service Facebook page, we're talking about fashion for the disabled. You'll hear from Anne Oliver in just a moment.